And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, June 19th, 8 EST, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. I am your host, Payson the Cinemaster Johnson, and tonight we are reviewing two big movies, The Flash, directed by Andy Muschietti, and Pixar's latest, Elemental, directed by Peter Sohn. I say we jump right into our first review, and joining me to review The Flash, some people know him for his height, some people know him for his good looks, some people know him for his sports knowledge, but most people know him for his insane knowledge of geeky topics. Thomas Scully. Scully, how are you doing tonight?
I'm all right. How about you?
I'm doing great. I promise this is the last time I will use your first name. We will be calling you by your last name. But I say we jump right into our first review if you're okay with that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sounds good. The Flash, directed by Andy Muschietti. This movie has been in pre-production. I don't know the exact year, but it seems like almost a decade, maybe a decade, probably like a little less than a decade, but it's gone through so many directors. I remember when it was going to be directed by Rick Famuyiwa, John Francis Daley, and essentially the guys that did Game Night and Dungeons and Dragons. But we landed on Andy Muschietti. DC Universe has kind of been in a bit of a rut since James Gunn has been announced to essentially be taking the series in brighter lights. But let's just talk about the movie as a whole. The Flash, played by Ezra Miller, has kind of trying to still get he's trying to prove that his father did not kill his mother, and he believes that he finally has a solution. He is going to go back in time to try and save his mom, but in doing that, wouldn't you know it, he causes a bunch of issues with the multiverse. Scully, I'm going to ask you, what have been your thoughts on the DCEU as a whole, and what have been your thoughts on Ezra Miller's portrayal as the Flash?
So when the DCEU first debuted, because I'll say it right now, I'm a Man of Steel defender. I love Man of Steel. I will be the first to admit, I don't think it's the best Superman adaptation, but I think it deals with a lot of really good real-world themes and a great portrayal of a Superman in a present-day American society. I think Snyder's vision of the DC universe is a little unconventional, but what was so great about it is it differed so greatly from what we had with the MCU. We genuinely, for a couple years, had two distinct universes, Marvel and DC, that didn't really clash. They weren't really going up against each other. Marvel was already in its phase 2 and its Winter Soldier and Guardians phase, which it was never going to get beat off that. And DC was just doing its own thing. And this is honestly, this is not to reference Spider-Verse, the canon event, it feels like, was Snyder and his wife being booted off the production of Justice League. Lots of factors went into that, but Jeff Johns, Kevin Tsujihara, all the heads, they wanted Whedon in there because he did Avengers, because they didn't want a different universe. They wanted the same thing Marvel had. And since that decision, we've had a couple of bright spots. We've had Shazam, which I would say is universally praised. You have Wonder Woman, at least the first Wonder Woman, which is universally praised. But at the same time, you have a lot of these other films where tonally, it's so different, and it's you never know if you're in the same universe going movie by movie. And even and now 10 years later, we have two different Justice League films. We have, I think, almost every sequel in the DCEU has been mediocre. Wonder Woman 84, Fury of the Gods, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom had some horrible test screenings because when Gunn took over, they rearranged the entire plot, and James Wan essentially had his vision taken away from him. At least that's what the rumors out there are saying. And now we're here, and we've just hit the hard reset, and it's so I've had my beef with the DCEU. The last few films I've just been tuned out for, and this one unfortunately was no different.
Yeah, I'm one of those weird I'm one of those weird people that I don't either love or hate Man of Steel. I think it's all right. Like I totally respect and I really appreciate what Zack Snyder was going for by putting Superman in kind of a modern day America. It reminds me of this, not to get super nerdy, but it reminds me of this comic run called Superman Earth One by J. Michael Straczynski. And I feel like, and I really love that comic. I think a lot of great things were put into that. I'm not a big fan of the final act of that movie. I think it gets a little too Michael Bay-esque, but honestly, everything before that, I'm honestly pretty high on. And the more, honestly, with how uneven the DCEU has gotten over the years, I've grown to appreciate Man of Steel more because that one, regardless of what you think, it feels like a complete film. All of these other ones feel like they have hands all over it, except for the few bright moments, like you said, like Wonder Woman, like Shazam. But yeah, like I'm just thinking like Black Adam is supposed to be the main villain in Shazam, but in that movie, it mentions all these other aspects of the DC universe except for Shazam. And I think that should tell you like how disjointed this franchise has been for going on 10 years now, because Man of Steel came out in 2013. And yeah, you made a great point of none of the sequels have really stuck the landing except for maybe the Suicide Squad. And then again, I'd say sequel there, because that is essentially kind of a hard reboot on the main Suicide Squad. And then going into this movie, I know they were trying to use it maybe as a big reset of the universe, but it's kind of trying to reset a universe that is not really going to be there. And I think that kind of is what makes the brunt of this film's flaws come to light. This is supposed to be you can tell with this movie they're trying to be a big event, like in the way that Justice League was, but knowing going into the film that none of this is really going to matter, I think kind of plays into your investment in these characters.
Yeah, there's been no singular focus as to what they want to do for maybe more than a full year. And now we have Gunn who's making this new universe with, you're starting out with Superman Legacy. You have Blue Beetle who the character is canon, but the movie might not necessarily be canon. So it's not to bog it down in a sports reference. It's like a general manager who wants to hit the reset button, but still wants to keep certain pieces of the team together to eventually make a championship run. So he's trying to have his cake and eat it too, but as of right now, knowing that Muschietti is now tabbed to direct Brave and the Bold, I'm pessimistic at best.
Honestly, yeah. Well, we'll get into Muschietti returning because honestly, I, as someone who enjoyed that first It movie, I have not really enjoyed anything Muschietti has done since then, and having him continue on and hearing such high praise before the movie came out, I was like, really, this is what we're praising? But I'm putting the cart before the horse. I will say I really liked the initial setup of this film. I thought the first 30 minutes or so was really setting up like a fun comic book movie, and I thought this was going to be a fun adventure with Barry Allen. I think I Know I'm Alone Here. I really liked that opening action sequence in the hospital of him saving all these kids. You can totally rip it apart in a second, but I also think it set up good motivations for why he would want to go back in time, why someone like Barry, who is at the end of the day a young hero and has not fully learned the consequences of his actions, why he would go and do these things. And I'd say right until, and this is in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, right until we meet the second Barry Allen, I was into this movie. Scully, what did you think of the first act of this film?
Here, I thought the first act was fine. I look personally for me. I think babies are a little bit of a, especially in action sequences, they're a bit of a trigger point for me. I
Okay.
don't like seeing babies being put in danger. So especially when you put one in a microwave, when there's fire all around you, I had a full blown panic attack in the theater.
Okay.
I was about to throw up my Slurpee. Like that's how bad it was. But taking that out of it, I think it is a cool sequence. I think it's directed pretty well. I don't love the way he runs, and that's what's more of a nitpick. When I personally prefer the way Grant Gustin runs in the show. I like that speed portrayal more. Um, but yeah, I think the sequence with Batman and Wonder Woman is super cool. But at the same time, it just feels it just didn't feel special. It didn't feel original. It feels like something we should have gotten 5 years ago in a Justice League film or in a potential Justice League sequel. Like we talk about all these great actors and these team ups that can happen in different movies and they never happen, and then we're teased with three members of the Justice League in one scene, which should have been a non-starter to begin with in a previous like it feels like they were showing us too little too late. It almost felt like a tribute to the old DCEU in that opening scene. Um, but I don't love. I've never liked Ezra Miller as the Flash. I've never liked him as Barry Allen. I thought they were even in Justice League. When even they had a couple good moments, and I still think the Speed Force scene in Zack Snyder's Justice League is my second favorite DCEU scene next to First Flight.
First Flight, yeah.
It is it's incredible, and they are really good in that scene. But like you said, the second we meet that second Mary Allen, it is all downhill from there.
Yeah. So, you brought up Ezra Miller's name, and I want to talk about them. This is a review show. We don't need to talk about Ezra Miller's personal life. You can go read all about that. I'm just viewing the movie as a whole. Yeah, that the Whedon cut of Justice League, I was not a fan of Ezra Miller's portrayal as the Flash there. I think it could have worked if he was playing maybe like another character, but knowing who Barry Allen is in the comics and how he's been portrayed in general, it felt like Whedon was trying to put in too many Joss Whedon moments of having this Barry be like super jokey and super like, oh, look at me, I'm so dumb. Or just so out of my element, and Ezra Miller's performance just didn't amount to much there for me. I admittedly have not seen Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I hear he is one of the best parts of that. Now, hearing what you have said,
they
so sorry. Yes, and I've heard they are one of the best parts of that. Now, hearing what you have said, maybe you disagree with that sentiment. Coming into this movie at the beginning, I thought Ezra Miller was giving a much better performance than they have in the past. I just think they were a little bit more dialed in for the first half, and I like the Barry Allen that I guess we'll call them Barry Allen Prime. The Barry that goes back into the past. I liked his performance for the most part. There are a few points in the movie where I think he gets a bit too whiny. But man, that second Barry just reminded me of the Joss Whedon Justice League stuff. Of just to me, he just felt that Barry Allen just felt too dumb in that version. Like it felt like we were really playing up how stupid he was. What do you think about this Barry?
I think what Muschietti was trying to do was create a Barry that was not traumatized by the death of his mother, and a Barry that, instead of dedicating his life to being a forensic scientist with CCPD, just like what if this Barry Allen had no motivation at all whatsoever? So I completely understand the decision-making process behind that. But again, we fall into the issue of Miller's performance. It just turned me off to everything that was going on around. I mean, props to Miller for being able to portray those two different characters.
I'll give them props.
But at the same time, like every time I was watching some of those scenes, and the second Barry's face was clearly digitally added, makes me think that 25 years ago, The Parent Trap came out, You have two Lindsay Lohans. It looks like there's two Lindsay Lohans genuinely in every scene. And yet 25 years later, we can't even get a superhero movie where two actors play the same version, two different versions of the same character, and both of them can't even look real at the same time. Like, that is such a huge, huge fuck up if you are DC Warner Bros. And you're trying. I mean, they couldn't even hide it in the promotional material. Even the promotional material, it looked like you were playing a PS4 game. And it progressively got worse from there.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. We'll get into recreating facial structures with CGI as we keep on going. But yeah, like so I have a question to ask you. With everything that we knew about Ezra Miller going into this, would you have tried to recast them if you were the producers of this movie?
I wouldn't have even released the movie, personally.
That's fair. Honestly,
with Gunn wanting to rebuild a universe, because here's my thing: you're Zaslav, you're Warner Brothers. You've already canned Batgirl because you don't think it's going to make money. The Flash made it needs to make probably $450 million just to really break even. It's not going to come close to that.
No.
So already you're losing millions of dollars. So personally, I think they should just scrap the film altogether. And they should do the same thing with Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, if that's not going to be canon whatsoever.
Lost Kingdom's a big one, yeah.
Blue Beetle can stay because they're actually going to be a part of the new universe.
Mm-hmm.
But even if the movie was going to make money, you still can't recast a major role like that. I mean, it's not like All the Money in the World, where Spacey's character wasn't in enough of the movie to fracture the foundation of the film. You easily got Christopher Plummer back in, reshot the scenes, and the guy got an Oscar nomination for it.
Yeah.
But this is your main character, and your main character is playing at two and in one scene 3 different roles. So you in my opinion, you got to either scrap the film or work with what you got. And they tried to work with what they had, but they probably should have scrapped it, in my opinion.
I want to tackle some of the supporting characters because I think that's probably the best thing this movie has going for it. As Barry goes into the past, he realizes that the Batman that is now the new Bruce Wayne is, you guessed it, Michael Keaton. It's really funny that the trailer showed him as such a major role as he had, because watching this movie, he shows up probably around halfway into the movie. But it's funny. Like, I love Michael Keaton as Batman. He is my personal favorite Batman. But man, you can tell that Keaton was kind of just trying to get a paycheck in this role. It's not horrible. Like, it's still super enjoyable. And honestly, my favorite scene of the movie is the introduction of his characters. I think it's just so out of left field that I kind of loved it. But I did still enjoy Keaton in this movie, even if he was a little bit low energy. And then also, Sasha Cale is excellent as Supergirl. And I think one of the biggest disservices this movie does is not giving her enough things to do. What did you think about Keaton and Sasha Cale?
Keaton, like, here's the thing. I love Michael Keaton. I love Batman 89. I'm not a fan of Batman Returns, but I still think he's really good in it. Mm-hmm. Keaton looks like somebody who was told, hey, you're going to be a big part of this universe going forward. And then halfway through filming, he was told, well, now hang on. We're probably not going to bring you back after this. We're probably going to look at somebody else to take over. So this will be your sort of swan song, okay? So this guy had a genuinely disappointed look on his face throughout the entirety of filming, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But no, you're right. I do like the intro scene a lot. I also think it's shot really well. I think it's one of the few scenes in the film that I think Muschietti does a really good job with. But his whole arc just feels rushed. Like, he's grizzled, he's old. Gotham doesn't need him anymore because there's no crime. Why? He got rid of all the crime. And now, like, all of a sudden, after one pep talk, he shaves his beard, cuts his hair, and puts on his batsuit again. Like, I'm sorry. That is in no way, shape, and form. Like, we can talk about realism all we want, but at some point, you have to be at least a little bit realistic. You at least have to show gradual development, even if it's a character that's been around for 30 years. So there's just no level of practicality to his role in the film, and even towards the end, you felt like he was just there for emotional weight. But I do agree. Kale is, I think, the only really good redeeming part of the film. She is great. I think that the shot of her after being exposed to sunlight when they're trying to escape the Russian facility is awesome. It is awesome. Like, I got genuine chills at that moment. That action sequence with her lined up with Keaton is fantastic. It's probably the only good action sequence in the film that didn't look like it was put together on Windows XP. But it sucks because half her screen time is Zod stabbing her. Literally, that's half her screen time.
What they do with her in the final act made me mad. Like, they could have done so many cool things.
Her and Keaton are essentially lions, or essentially pigs being bred for slaughter in that final sequence. And I get why. The battle's not important. Getting back to the past is important. I get it. But at the same time, if you're going to make a big deal about bringing back the most iconic Batman, at least for Generation X and Millennials, and if you're going to bring Supergirl onto the big screen for the first time in almost 40 years, you cannot do that to those characters. I'm sorry, you can't. It is if James Gunn does not keep her on for the Supergirl film,
that would suck. That would suck.
We need to genuinely be concerned about the direction of the DCU, because she embodies all the same qualities Cavill had. She very much reminded me of Cavill a lot. And especially, I think her in this film is a little bit like Cavill in BBS, where, of course, he doesn't trust humans. He's a bit more jaded. He's been through a lot. And Kale, in her timeline, she's been at the mercy of humans ever since she arrived to Earth. So there's little parallels like that make me hopeful that she could be a really good Supergirl. But at the same time, it makes me really afraid that Gunn will see that and be like, I'm going to go find somebody else.
It's such a different interpretation of what we've seen of Supergirl in the past. Like, Supergirl is usually like this super peppy and over optimistic character, and I think Kale did such a great job of portraying the anger and distrust at humanity, and like, why would I want to help you guys? Like, you've done nothing but torture me. And even with her limited screen time, I think this movie does. I think through Kale's performance, it really helps you see why she does in the end decide to help Barry. But yeah, like you said, it would suck if we just didn't use her in the future.
And I will say her development, especially when, she comes back to help Barry get his powers, I think that's something I wasn't entirely focused on, but it made sense. So I'll give them props for that. They developed the character well. They just did not know what to do with her in the third act. They were so focused on the two Barrys, which is probably better because you don't want to end up with a Spider-Man 3 situation where you're trying to focus on too many things at once that you just lose focus of the whole film. So points for keeping the focus, but if you're gonna do that, then you can't use those characters.
Yeah. Scully, let's get on to maybe the biggest weakness of this film. The VFX, or the visual effects, are atrocious in this movie. You alluded that they look like a PS4 game. Someone that's played The Last of Us Part 2 and Spider-Man 2018, you are giving the PS4 not enough credit.
I said that, but it gets gradually worse. So it looks more like PS3, PS2 VFX towards the end.
And Andy Muschietti has come out to make the defense of, well, this is how the Flash views things when he's running. The biggest, the comparison I would say to that is when Tenet came out. If you saw that movie in theaters, the noise was so loud to the point where you couldn't hear things. And Nolan came out and said, "Well, this is how I mix my movies." And full credit to Nolan. I can't hear your movie. I can't hear your movie. And full credit to Andy Muschietti. Your visual effects look like crap. They look like crap. And that, I think, is just kind of a poor defense of whenever the Flash is running, it looks so fake with everything you're looking at.
If you've ever actually, so go out right now, pause this video, go out and run for about 15 to 20 seconds as fast as you can. Look around you as you run. You don't see PS2 characters. Everything is a blur. So if we're going off of that, then everything around Barry should have been blurry. It should have been like we were looking at a CRT TV screen. Like we should have been looking at box TVs with how low def things are when you run. Also, if we're going to go purely based off of physics, the more you run, the more tired you get, the weaker your vision becomes. So if we're being realistic with how Barry views things, by the end of the film, the screen should be barely lit. We shouldn't see any characters except for what's right in front of Barry. So if you're going to go with the realistic physical point of view, at least back it up with actual science.
Honestly, if they would have done that, I wouldn't have liked it. I would have respected it more. If they would have
if you actually, I think this film could have greatly benefited from something like the Quicksilver sequences in the X-Men films,
which looks
where
so
you're
much.
You're looking at everything in the slow motion of the character. And when you're in slow motion, things become clearer. So a great way to do that would have been, well, during the battle, you at least have either Barry 1 or Barry 2, like looking from their point of view at everything that's going on. And you can influence people every which way. Now, they do this pretty well in the opening scene. They do that well in the opening scene.
I agree.
But it could have, it wasn't utilized at all in the climax.
There is a shot in this movie when I realized the visual effects were in trouble, and I cannot wait for this movie to come out on streaming because it's going to become a meme. It's where Barry is looking into the past. It is just his head, like, floating out of this little portal, and it looks so bad. I was like,
Thor Love and Thunder level.
Yes, it is like the kid, the famous kid face in Thor Love and Thunder, where the effects just look unfinished and it just doesn't look polished at all. And this is another complaint. We gotta stop bringing back deceased actors with CGI. Like, I don't want to get into major spoilers, but this movie really tries to hammer home the history of DC at the end, and what should have been big cheer moments just felt like oof moments for me.
Especially when the average age of the people going to see this movie is 25, 26.
Yeah.
Especially with the audience that superhero films are going for these days. They're going for the cheap laugh. They're going for kids. Kids aren't going to recognize people who played DC characters in the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even the 80s. They're not going to recognize this. It should have, and especially with Muschietti having the quote-unquote cameo budget that he did, there's no excuse for what we saw. Now, if the VFX had been done right, the actor we saw fighting the mechanical spider,
that could
know which one I'm referring to,
yes.
That would have been a really, really funny big cheer moment. But instead, I'm staring into the face of somebody I played on a console in 2007.
No, absolutely. The third act, in general, I think we've kind of talked about it. It just doesn't work as a whole. One of the major things is, like, as I'm watching the end of this movie and we're watching both the Flashes, Supergirl, and Batman fight Zod's army, I keep remembering that we've had like 2 or 3 times Barry Prime just have like war flashbacks to this giant purple collage monster that just seems to be chasing him. And as I'm watching this finale, I'm like, oh yeah, aren't we going to resolve that? And we do. And when you learn, I'm like, okay, Yeah.
If you've seen the Flash TV show, the second you see the purple guy, you know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know exactly where it's going. You know that it's going to be another Barry, and the second you see Barry 2 become obsessed with trying to win an unwinnable fight, you know exactly who the purple guy is. You know exactly how it's going to end up. You know how it's going to resolve itself. It's cookie cutter predictable crap. And again, it's a good storyline, but the TV show did it way better. Character design. When it comes to character design, though, I will take this movie. I think this movie designed the character a little bit better, but it felt too easy. It felt way too easy. Even I think the portrayal of time travel, where you have like the little dome around them, and like each level is into a different part of your past. Like that's just it honestly reminded me of Inside Out a bit, where
Yeah.
where you're going through like all the memory marbles and you're looking at all the images. It's like going through an Apple photo gallery at some point. Like it's so lots of so there was the biggest. It boils down to this, and I'm rambling a bit, but it boils down to this. There are more moments in this film where I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what? How does that go? If I'm questioning myself and questioning what I see rather than just enjoying what I'm seeing, your movie has a problem. Your movie has a significant problem, especially if you're trying to wrap up a universe that's poorly constructed, if you're trying to introduce characters that might be back, might not be back, and if you're trying to stay focused on your main two characters and trying to plant Easter eggs throughout the film for the ending, it's like, yes, you might actually tip off the audience, but they're going to guess it anyway if they even know a little bit about the character.
Yeah, this movie doesn't. I feel like this movie's trying to have its cake and eat its too, and eat it too, where it's trying to make all these insane references that like the big DC nerds would get, but then it's doing it, but then it's still having the same predictable storyline and trying to pass that off as like a big twist. And I just don't think those things really mesh. If I could give this movie just one last compliment, I think when Barry finally realizes that, look, I can't be trying to change the past, and when he tries to make the ultimate decision in the end, his last like confrontation with a certain character, it did admittedly get me, and I was a little emotional towards the end. I thought it was going to do something even crazier, and I will message you afterwards. But I think the movie may have gotten that may have been a little too dark for what this movie had set up. Just from previous things, but I did enjoy that last confrontation between Barry and his mom, Scully. What did you think about that?
I liked it too, and if it was a better movie, I would have been emotional.
No, that's fair.
But it's just one of those things where you go for the big emotional ending, but doesn't earn it. Like if you go for the big emotional gut punch, you have to earn it. You have to at least show that you're developing your movie in the right way. You have to show that you are focused on the right things, and you have to display to your audience that you care about the characters. And what we're given is a 2+ hour slugfest of DC propaganda and nostalgia. And you don't get to do that unless you have built a universe worthy of that conclusion. It's one thing if you're Marvel and you want to put up No Way Home. You want to bring Toby and Andrew back. Wonderful. They did a great job. You want to know why that movie's perfect? Because it earns it. Because they built up their Spider-Man for almost 5 different films. Of course, like 5 different films. That's why it worked. You want to know why the Spider-Verse films work so well with nostalgia? It's because those characters have been around for years, and through movies, shows, animation, comics, they are They take the best parts of all those characters and put them on the most important stage. What is the most important part of Barry Allen being the Flash? I mean, no, sorry. I should pose that as a question to you. What do you think is the most important aspect of Barry Allen as the Flash?
From what the movies have shown me, it's that he feels guilty for what happened to his mom, and he wants to protect his dad because of what happened.
Exactly, but it doesn't stop there. It goes with everybody he meets. It goes with his friends, his loved ones, any person, even the members of the Justice League. And yet, at the start of this film, he still feels like he's on the JV squad.
Yeah,
He's still, cowers when Wonder Woman shows up. He's giddy as a schoolboy, and he has no really heartfelt interactions with Bruce Wayne unless Bruce is lecturing him about something. So that character is not built up for this moment. The character is not built for the moment, and you try to create a story that makes him meant for the moment, and it fails. And it fails because he wasn't ever built up.
I think what you just said, I think, has been the biggest issue of the DCEU or the worlds of DC since the beginning. We have our second movie in this franchise be Batman v Superman, which should have come down much farther down the pipe. And that's our second movie. That movie ends with Superman dying, and you just really feel kind of nothing. And this is a movie that is trying to pretend like we've had this huge universe of characters we've really cared for. And the biggest issue with it is we unfortunately don't. Scully, before we head into final ratings, is there anything else you want to say about this film?
Well, I think I like what you said about that being the theme of the DCEU. They go for so many big stories, so many big punches, and it all comes back to wanting to catch up to Marvel.
Yep.
You can't catch up to a universe that had a 5-year head start on you in 3 years. You can't. It's impossible. The studio and the executives ruined any chance of a coherent universe being built up alongside Marvel. And in an alternate reality, if Snyder's not fired, Justice League comes out probably 6 months before. No, so let's say in an alternate universe they push back Justice League to the middle of 2018, and you have a Zack Snyder Justice League that comes out 2 months after Infinity War, and then Part 2 comes out 2 months after Endgame, and for 2 years you have Avengers and the Justice League going head to head, back to back summers. The way it should be. The way it should be. The way it should be. It shouldn't be about competition.
No.
It should be about providing fans who have loved these characters for years with great entertainment and great storytelling. And they've sacrificed that for a quick buck, and then they realized their mistake, and they tried to backtrack and give us those great stories. But the character development behind it was never there to begin with.
Yeah, a dream world would be a successful Marvel universe and a successful DC universe. Hopefully, James Gunn brings us into lighter pastures. My enthusiasm is a little bit dampened now, but I'm still going to remain optimistic. We'll see what happens. Scully here at Cinemaster's Reviews. We rate movies on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes. 0 is awful, just absolutely irredeemable. You never want to think about it again. And 10 is an incredible masterwork, one that you will one that reminds you why you love movies in general. If you were to rate this on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, what would you give it?
I would probably give it a 5, and I think that's being a little bit generous. I especially when I'm watching movie for the first time, I tend to shade towards the more general. I tend to shade more generously on first viewings. So 5 is my generous rating because there's elements of a good. The action set pieces are good for the most part. I think you highlight great aspects of great characters, but you try to go for an emotional payoff that doesn't stick because ultimately your main character is poorly developed, has been treated like a sideshow for 6 years now without any sort of development whatsoever. And you tried to bring in two great characters, one for nostalgia, one for, I guess, hope for the future. And you said them both at the most important moments. So points for guts, points for a little bit of originality and pretty good character design, but that's about all it gets from me.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well said. I think I'm going to give it a little higher than you, but I'm still not going to give it a passing grade. I'm giving it a 5.5. I think there are a lot of things that I did enjoy about this movie. I liked its initial setup. I liked some of the characters. I just wish I could have gotten more invested in it. I think, like you said, I think it's just the fact that we just don't care about the character of Barry Allen, at least in this portrayal, as much as we should for everything it's trying to set up. If you were a fan of the DCEU, I could see you. I could maybe recommend you go see this in the theater at this point. If you're not a fan of comic book movies, this is absolutely not going to sway you. So I'd say just try to stay away from it. But you can save this honestly for streaming or for home video.
It'll be out on HBO Max in September. So
yeah, honestly. But yeah,
no, I guess it's Max now. Sorry, Max.
Yeah, Max. Sorry, yeah, because the HBO brand is so dirty to some people and would turn viewers away. Scully, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Before you leave, is there anything you would like to promote or plug?
Promote, plug, not particularly. If you like, well, there's a couple things. If you like good trivia, we over at Onsol have rebranded. It's definitely more geek now. So we have our Geek Grand Championship, our Geek Teams Championship as well. We just shot a massive battle for the Triviaverse free for all. 32 competitors, all vying for the shot at a title of their choosing. That should be releasing sometime soon. We have a lot of great singles and teams matches coming down the pipeline as well. So follow Opening Night's Trivia on YouTube and watch all the Geek Grand Championship and Geek Teams Championship videos from the start.
Ontel Geek doing a lot of great stuff over there. Thank you so much, Scully, for coming on tonight. We'll try to get you down for another review soon, but till then, have a great night. Thank you so much, Scully, once again for coming on to Cinemaster's reviews. But we are going to be heading right into our second review. That is Elemental, directed by Peter Sohn. This is Pixar's latest film. It's their second film since 2020, when they really went they were just putting their movies on Disney Plus, and in a way kind of devalued their brand, unfortunately, in a little. I've been noticing the box office for this movie wasn't that strong, and I think that might have had something to do with it. But Elemental, this is a really, really interesting film. This is about 4 elements that have all kind of come together to make this elemental city. You have the fire people, you have the water people, you have the wind people, and you have the earth people. And when I say people, I mean they're literally made of those elements. The fire people are literally made of fire, and the water people are literally made of water. And this movie opens with a fire family coming from a distant land on a boat to essentially sort of start a new life in Element City and make a name for themselves. You follow a young girl named Ember. She is made of fire, and she is supposed to be taking over her dad's shop because her dad is going to be retiring soon. In this film, we see the first day she is taking care of the shop by herself, she accidentally causes a leak and ends up drawing the ire of a health inspector whose name is Wade, who is one of the water people. They start to meet, they start to talk, maybe a little misunderstanding happened, and wouldn't you know, they start to fall in love and maybe become friends, even though their love is supposed to be forbidden because elements don't really attract or come together in this world. The first thing I want to say about this movie is I think the world is so incredibly well created and developed. I love the fact that there are different aspects of this city. The main city is controlled kind of like by the water people, and the fire people are sort of treated as as outcasts because they are the most dangerous element, because whenever they walk around, they are unfortunately a danger to everyone else. And they also don't want they really don't want water in their part of the city, because if water and fire meet, they are supposed to destroy each other, as we know. I love how I said that in quotes, when in real life that actually would happen. The characters of Ember and Wade, I think, are a lot of fun. Wade in specific is a character I really, really love. He was voiced by, I want to make sure I pronounce this right, Mamadou Athie. New actor. I don't think I've really seen him in anything. I think he's fantastic. And Wade is just a guy that it's set up that he's kind of a dorky guy, kind of a nerdy guy, but he has a way of just making people like him. And Ember is someone that is kind of reserved. She doesn't really know what she quite wants to do with her life. And just watching the two kind of meet and form a connection with each other, I think is really, really great. This movie sets up a lot of really cool things in its world. Like there was a plant museum that, or like a plant garden that used to exist but was unfortunately flooded, so it's no longer around. Just the like different like subway trains and seeing all the elements mix, I think is really, really cool. There's a fun sport in this movie. I forget the exact name, but all the wind creatures play it because they're the only ones that can really like fly, and they throw the balls around to each other. I think that's a lot of fun. Movie also looks incredible. It's Pixar. I think you always kind of know you are going to be getting a very pretty looking animated movie with all the cool designs and all the unique colors. I'm just happy to have Pixar back on the screen, and I think this movie does a really great job at showcasing everything the studio is known for. And yeah, no one would ever say a Pixar movie really looks bad, and this movie doesn't do anything to dissuade people of that. Now, from everything I think you've heard, oh, and I should also say, I really love the scenes of Ember with her family. Like, we are set up that Ember's dad doesn't like water people just because of what they do with his shop and how they're always just kind of mean to him. And you can very clearly see the allegories towards the immigration story in America. This movie's trying to do that with the fire people, and we'll sort of get into maybe some of the shortcomings of that allegory. But I really like the scenes of Ember with her father. There's a joke about how Ember sometimes needs to be the translator for her dad, and I think there are some really sweet moments there, and I love just how that story kind of comes together. But yeah, on the allegory of immigration and treating the elements as if they are different races, it's a decent allegory when you don't think about it too much. I understand that this movie's trying to show that, like, hey, we shouldn't be prejudiced towards other people. We shouldn't base someone based on how they look, which of course that is a sentiment that I think we can all get behind. But the issue is when you have scenes of the fire people walking around and they are burning everything, and they are kind of in danger. I think the movie is giving the other characters reasons to not like them, and I think that's not, and I think that's just kind of an unsafe way to portray different cultures and different ethnicities by saying, oh, these people are scared because there's an actual danger, when like prejudices don't really come from anything. They are just sort of unfounded in a way, and I think this movie doesn't. This movie was definitely trying to make maybe make those concepts a little easier for kids to understand. But when you're an adult watching these movies, which I think Pixar is usually does such a good job at making movies for kids and adults, you just kind of see these allegories and you're like, that probably wasn't what the movie was intending. Which I'm not saying the movie is trying to say that, yo, other cultures are a danger, but it's kind of what the movie was involuntarily showing. If I could just say one other kind of complaint about the movie is, while I really love the conflict with the characters of Ember is afraid to leave the shop because she truly believes that her dad needs her and the shop is not going to succeed without her. that is a good conflict. I love the whole are Wade and Ember going to be able to work in a relationship if they can't touch, if they can't truly be together? Is that going to work? But the one conflict I didn't really enjoy about the movie was it keeps on cutting back to there is a leak that is kind of affecting the city, and that could end up completely destroying the fire part of Element City. It's really fun for like the first half of the movie because that's kind of where Wade and Ember meet, because we learned that Ember's store doesn't really doesn't fit the safety codes that other shops in Element City are supposed to meet. But towards the end of the film, this is kind of what like the climax of the movie is hoping that Fire City isn't flooded. And by the end, I just didn't really care. This seems kind of this might seem kind of juvenile, but I kind of just wish like we either didn't need that extra threat or we needed a true villain, because I think having this like forced flood at the end just felt kind of forced and kind of tacked on, and I didn't really feel like the movie needed it. Where I think we could have had a really sweet romance film, some touchy things on immigration and bilingual families, but I hope I'm using the right terms. But that maybe those metaphors weren't quite as fully explored or maybe fully thought out as the movie would have thought. But I think honestly that was my biggest complaint with the movie, was the fact of it feels like the third act is a little tacked on, and I just didn't care about like this major conflict, and I just didn't really feel like we needed this big bombastic set piece towards the end. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10, though, I would probably give it around a 7.5. This is not top tier Pixar by any means, but I do think it is a good, solid film in their repertoire. If you have kids, I would highly recommend you go and take them to the theater for this one. Even if you don't, I think this would be a really great movie to go see, especially because of all the crazy visuals in this movie. Don't think too much about the metaphors of this movie, because it does unfortunately kind of fall apart, and that is what kind of keeps it from greatness for me. But other than that, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful film that I think many people are going to enjoy. So yeah, that's the reviews for Elemental and The Flash. Thank you all for showing up tonight. Thank you, Scully, for coming on to guest for my Flash review. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. It helps out a lot. We have new videos. We have new content coming out every day, and it helps our channel grow. Remember to buy our merch on the video store at tpublic.com. We have a ton of cool shirts. We have a Cinemasters review shirt, and it's an awesome one. It has all the videotapes on, and I really love it. But yeah, thank you all for showing up tonight. Next week, we have our reviews of Asteroid City. I know the movie already came out in limited release this week, but it's going to be expanding wide. And we're also going to be reviewing No Hard Feelings, the new Jennifer Lawrence comedy. And joining me for the Asteroid City review, I'm so excited. We got Cameron Redshaw. Cameron Redshaw is one of the most likable people in this community, and I'm very excited to hear what he has to say about the new Wes Anderson film. So yeah, on behalf of me and everyone else here at the video store, I'm the Cinemaster. Have a great night.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Yeah, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.